After 216 days, we've finally made it. Cleveland Browns football is back. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. Trying to get to 200 before the season starts. Any help would be greatly appreciated. So, 216 days, I believe. Over 7 months, 7 long months. Obviously, after finishing the season 3-14, the off season goes a little bit slower than maybe if you had won the Super Bowl, because we'd still be drunk. But it's been quite a long time. It's been a long time coming, especially for us British fans. I've said this before. The Premier League off season used to feel like quite a long time. And then you get into American sports and the Premier League off-season just feels like a week. NFL truly is a grind, the off-season. But we finally made it, guys. It is game day, game 1 of the preseason against Carolina. This game is at Carolina. So, gonna talk all things Shedeur starting, what to expect from the team as a whole. Some players that I'm excited to watch, as well as, of course, cover the whole starting versus resting players debate. I'm going to start it off straight with that because this generates a lot of discourse, and I understand why. The Browns, after starting horrifically last year against Dallas, looked like they quit in the second quarter. A lot of people probably want to see more reps from the starters this preseason. Where I stand on this, look, I don't really care, if I'm totally honest, because there's no science behind this. Whether you start guys, rest guys, there is no correlation between either resulting in wins or losses in the regular season when it comes around. There is just no science behind this. There really isn't. You can say you want guys to start because you don't want them to be rusty, all of that stuff. That is fair enough. I would agree with you. But you can't say they need to start them because, this team has done it and look how well they did last year. No, that's just not the case. Sean McVay never, ever plays his starters, refuses to play any starters. I think that's worked out quite well for him. On the flip side, Andy Reid likes to play his starters for a couple of series in each game. That's worked out pretty well for them. As I said, there is no science behind this. Yes, you can pick out things that you would want them to do just based on your opinion and based on how they were last year. I mean, I agree. I'd like to see the starters get more reps than they usually do. Of course I would. But as I said, there's just no science behind this. So we can say that, but in the same breath, we can't really say it's proven that it works because it's not. Take the Bengals. They haven't really played their starters since Joe Burrow's been there. They decided to play their starters last night in game 1 of preseason. We'll see how that ends up. Do they start slow again this year? If so, then that's just more proof that this really doesn't mean anything. If they start well, maybe that's more proof to the other. So, as I said, there's no science behind this. This is one of the few things, actually, to be honest, in the NFL that, there's no consensus on. It's a copycat league. If one team gets something right, a lot of teams will follow suit. But that's just not the case with preseason. Everyone has their own way of doing it. Yes, we can nitpick at it, but in the end of the day, there's no proven right or wrong way of doing this. That's my thoughts on it. I'm not saying don't criticize them for not playing their starters, but don't claim that it's because that it's a fact that if you play your starters, you're going to win 10 games or make the play. That's just not realistic. For me, I mean, I didn't expect them any starters, to be honest, in the first game of preseason. So the fact that we're even getting any starters, apparently we are getting some starters. So the fact we're getting any is actually a surprise to me. The way I kind of see them or saw them doing it was, First preseason game, you're getting those rookies, you're getting those 2s and 3s. Second preseason game, you might couple of series at the start of the game with the starters, and in the third preseason game, you might get a few more series than that. I still expect that to be the case, obviously, with some starters apparently playing tonight. So we'll have to wait and see. But as I said, that we can nitpick, we can moan, but in the end of the day, there is no science behind this stuff. It's just one of those random things in the NFL. We don't really know. On to the exciting part, shall we say. Shedeur Sanders is obviously starting. We all know this. I've even done a video on this. Him and Tyler Huntley will be splitting the reps. What's that going to look like? My assumption is that Shedeur gets a half and Tyler Huntley gets a half. I would want Shedeur probably to get more than that. I mean, I said in my last video, I have no problem with Shedeur playing the whole game. I just don't think they're going to do that, seeing as A, the injury risk, and B, Shedeur is probably the only guy that's going to play in all 3 games. Maybe Snoop Huntley if he's still here, but Shedeur is the only guy that is definitively, barring injury, going to play in all 3 preseason games. So I just think they're going to want to be a bit more careful with his conditioning. Could he do it? Of course he could. He's a professional athlete. He's in the NFL. I'm sure he could play 3 preseason games, the whole game, if he needed to. But that's just not how teams operate in the preseason. You need to see, from the other guys, Dylan, Kenny Pickett in these other 2 games as well. So, but this is his biggest opportunity, I think. This first game, I don't think he'll get as many reps in any of the other games as he will today. So massive opportunity for Shedeur. I've spoken about this in my last video if you want to go and see that, but really excited to see what he can do with some 1s, mostly 2s and 3s. This first few series he will be going up against Carolina's number 1 defense. So they haven't shown us much the last few years, that number 1 defense, especially not the defensive line. But it is going to be a good experience for him to at least get a few series against starting level NFL defenses, and an NFL defense that players that are actually going to be on the team, not selling insurance. But yeah, so that's the quarterback. So I'm of course excited for it. As I mentioned, so Stefanski has said that some starters will play. He's already announced that Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman won't play, so I suppose that confirms Cedric Tillman as our wide receiver 2 next year. Take that as you want. We'll have to wait and see if that works out or not. If he can as the X, if he can establish himself as the X receiver, that would be massive for this team, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm certainly not holding my breath, to say the least. But it will be cool to see the other guys. Obviously, Deontay Johnson, I'm assuming he's playing. There's no mention of him not. And then Greg Newsome on defense. I highly doubt Denzel Ward is going to play. I would be annoyed if Myles Garrett plays. Let's not have him out there for any preseason game. He doesn't need the reps. Let's wrap him up in bubble wrap. So, some of the top guys you won't see. I wouldn't expect to see Joel Bitonio. I won't expect to see Wyatt Teller. Do we see DeJuan Jones? Maybe. Do we see Jack Conklin? Probably not. So it will pretty much be that second string offensive line, maybe a starter or 2 sprinkled in. And then no Zach Zinter either, because he did not participate even in the joint practice. So I mentioned in my offensive line preview that Zach Zinter might not make this roster. It's not looking great for him, to say the least. But in terms of some guys that I am excited to see in this game, first and foremost, of course, quarterback Shedeur Sanders, goes without saying. I've obviously done a whole video on that. The running backs, it would be nice to see some stuff out of Dylan Sampson. I tweeted yesterday, I think most people have probably seen the news by now that Quinshon Judkins waived his right to a quick trial. So it's going to be a prolonged trial, which I could be completely wrong here. This is just my 2 cents, but to me, I think he might have just forfeited his rookie season. If I don't think the NFL are going to let him play until this gets resolved, and he's just pushed that even longer to getting resolved. So I generally would not be surprised if that means that he's just forfeited his entire rookie season, which if is the case, is a disaster, to be honest, and not great. I'd probably need to sign someone. So Dylan Sampson, I do think, he is the one guy in that room that if he has to, I think could take a number one running back workload. This is a guy that led the SEC in carries last year with over 250. He was the SEC Player of the Year. Yes, he's slightly, you could argue, he's more of a change of pace back. He's a slightly smaller back, but he does have pretty sturdy lower body. He's quite a thick running back. So pause. So I do think he can, take the rigorous kind of beatings that you do take as an NFL running back, and especially one that might be taking over 200 carries. So it'll be good to see him show some signs tonight, of course. Wide receiver, I mentioned Deontay Johnson. It'll be, of course, great to see some good things out of him. He's probably going to be the number one target tonight, I would imagine. But Luke Fleuera, everyone's favourite camp player this year. There's always one that comes in, either an undrafted free agent or just a random guy picked up off the street that comes in and impresses and has the fan base calling for them to make the roster. And this year is Luke Fleuera. I can't even pronounce his name. Luke Fleuera. I'm so bad with names if you haven't figured it out by now. So it's going to be good opportunity for him. More of a case for him to make the roster that he can make. If he's out there returning punts as well, then that's another avenue that he can create for himself to get on this 53-man roster. So I'm, of course, looking forward to seeing him. Tight ends, come on. It's Harold Fanning. Although I say that, he has kind of got all of his reps with the ones in training camp. And obviously some with the twos as well. But, we all expect this offense to go back to its bread and butter. We expect to see a lot more 12 personnel, a lot more two tight end sets out there, which essentially makes him a starter, technically, if he's out there with the 11. But I do think we will see Harold Fanning tonight. And, as I said with Deontay Johnson, maybe Harold Fanning's the number one target tonight. And just to see anything out of him would be great, just to put some, people have got doubts about his speed and all of this stuff and his change of pace and all of that stuff. So for him to kind of, you're not going to silence that in preseason, but if he can come and, look decent and kind of shut those kind of things up, then that's obviously going to be good to see. And I just love Harold Fanning anyway. He was my draft crush, so I just cannot wait to watch him play any football. I hope you guys feel the same. Offensive line, as I mentioned, we probably won't see most of these starters, definitely not the vets. But I'm interested to see Tevin Jenkins, who I've heard had a pretty good joint practice against Carolina. So, he's someone that I was quite excited about the signing of, someone that I actually had as a potential replacement for Batonio as a starter, to get him on, a minimum deal, 1 year deal as a backup. I thought was great business. Number one thing for him is to stay healthy. But if he can do that, I think he's going to provide great depth for this team. And, that starts tonight, showing that he can stay healthy and put some good film out there. But I'm also looking forward to see Luke Whitebler, who might be starting centre tonight. I'm not entirely sure, or he'll be playing guard. This is a guy that played a bit of guard last year and looked really good. He's a centre by trade, but we all know how kind of interchangeable that interior offensive line is. It's probably even easier to go, kick out to the right or the left and be a guard and not have to worry about snapping the ball. So excited to see, him continue to build on the good play that he's had. And, as I said in my O-line preview, if he gets rostered as a guard, then there's no chance that Zach Zinter makes this roster. So, does that suck? Your third round pick not being off the roster within 2 years? Yeah. But if it's because my sixth round pick was better and proved that, then that's fine. Cheaper contract, I suppose. But that's the offense. That's who I'm looking forward to seeing on the offense. In terms of the defense, as I said, don't expect to see many of the starters on the defense, because this is the Browns' best unit. So if we want to protect anyone, let's protect the defense, because that's going to be the number one reason keeping us in games next year. So we're not going to see Miles, we're not going to see Denzel, we're not going to see Greg Newsome. But in terms of the defensive line, I'm actually quite excited to see Jawan Briggs, someone that in the limited reps that he got last year looked good. This is a behemoth of a man, a defensive tackle that can actually kick out to the edge as well. Just a versatile defensive lineman that I think has a chance of making this roster as the fourth defensive tackle. So that starts tonight with him putting some good tape out there. Mason Graham, I don't think he's going to play. He's as much as a starter as some of these other guys. I do have that much faith in him, and do think he will be a day one impact starter. So maybe we get a couple of series out of him just to kind of, wet the paws a little bit, get him some taste of an NFL game. But I think that probably comes in, the second and third game, more so than this game. But in terms of, some other pass rushers, Cameron Thomas, I'm quite excited to see him tonight. If he plays, of course, someone that really, really, showed a lot in the limited reps that he got towards the end of last season when, we started playing some of these back of the roster guys more. So if he can continue that, have a great preseason, then he'll give the Browns some questions about that fourth defensive end spot. And Aiden Hutchinson as well, someone that, one of these guys that the Browns love, these interchangeable tackles that can also kind of kick it out and play on the edge if they need to. He's from everything I've seen, everything I've heard, he's had a pretty solid camp. So let's see if he can build on that as well. Linebackers, if anyone has watched any of my videos, very limited videos on the Cleveland Browns linebackers, you'll know the answer to this. Winston Reed. I genuinely was so impressed with Winston Reed last year in the limited snaps that he had. I think he'll make this roster, and I think he has a great chance to just prove that this preseason as well. Nathaniel Watson is another one, someone that if he's going to make this roster, it'll be as that Sam. Someone that has got pass rush upside and could be used as the blitzer. So excited to see him as well. I think we might see all the linebackers, to be honest. Maybe I say all the linebackers, maybe not Jerome Baker, but to be honest, he wasn't listed as a starter on the initial depth chart, so we might even see some of the vets in Jerome Baker as well. The only guy we might not see is Carson Schlesinger, but with him being a rookie, yes, he's going to be our starting linebacker and probably play the most snaps out of any linebacker on this team. But he is still a rookie, so I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they kind of sprinkled in a few snaps for him in there. But as I said, in terms of the kind of lesser known guys that we probably will see more of tonight, Winston Reed, cannot wait to see what he can do and hopefully build upon that great play from last year. The DBs, as I said, I don't expect to see the top guys. That includes obviously Grant Delpit as well. Cam Mitchell, nearly forgot his name there. I'm very sorry, Cameron. Cameron Mitchell, of course, has a chance to be a starter this year now with the injury to MJ Emerson. So let's see if he can kind of establish himself as that slot. Maybe tonight he actually plays some outside and Miles Harden plays some slot. But either way, there's a chance for those two guys to, basically put their names in the hat for that, that third starting role, technically starting role in that cornerback room as that nickel. So let's see if either of those two guys can take steps towards that. And then in terms of the safeties, as I said, we probably won't see Grant Delpit. Obviously, Hickman, it'll be good to see more out of him. But for me, it's the two veterans in Kazi and Jenkins. So let's see what we get out of those two guys. At first, when we camp kind of started, I was under the impression that one of those would probably be out. Ronnie Hickman for that starting role as that free safety. It doesn't look like that's happened yet. Ronnie Hickman has obviously held his own, but let's see if they can take any steps towards doing that in the preseason. So I'm excited to see all the guys. They're just a few guys that obviously I wanted to highlight, but I'm excited to see all the guys because, as I said at the start, it's been 7 months since we got to watch this team or any of these guys play football on a real NFL field. So I can't wait. Looking forward to it. What should we expect? Look, it's pre-season. Don't put too much stock into it. If Shadur Sanders goes out and struggles, don't put too much stock into it. If he goes out and lights it up, don't put too much stock into it. Of course, it's going to be a bonus, but it is still pre-season. I would argue that the joint practices are just as important as these pre-season games because you're actually getting real reps against another team's starters, something you're not really getting that much in the pre-season. So I would argue the joint practices are just as important, but that doesn't mean the pre-season game is not important. As I said, it's a chance for all of these rookies to wet their paws, get a taste of an NFL game, as well for all these kind of depth pieces and these, fighting for a roster spot type players to, make a name for themselves and give themselves more opportunity to make the roster. So pre-season is always fun, no matter what team you support. It's always great to see. I joke that some of these guys will be selling insurance in a couple of months, but in the end of the day, if I was selling insurance but could tell people that I played in the NFL preseason, I'd be telling them every single day. That is for sure. This is a great opportunity for these guys, whether they make their rosters or not. They can put some tape out there. Let's say there's a Browns player that plays in the preseason, puts some good tape out, doesn't make the Browns 53, but maybe that tape gets him on another team's 53 or another team's practice squad. There is lots of opportunities for these guys, so I'm excited to see it. As I said, should they play their starters? You can argue that all day. I probably would agree with you on most cases, but look, there's no science behind this. There really isn't, so we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm excited. If you can't tell, guys, I hope you guys are excited. 7 months with no football. I think there's only one weekend in between, or 2 weekends. So, between now and January, the end of mid-Jan, end of Jan, maybe February, you never know. We're going to get Cleveland Browns football every week, barring 1 or 2 weeks. So football is back. The Cleveland Browns are back. I cannot wait. But that would do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. My reviews and previews in the actual season will be a lot more in-depth than these. It's pre-season. I wanted to have a bit of fun with it. But if you do enjoy my content, as I said, please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. You can check the links in my description to see where you can follow me on social media. If you want to see me, live tweeting about this game, that's the place to find it. As always, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. I hope everyone enjoys the game tonight. Let's not go too crazy in terms of the takes. Go as crazy as you want in terms of the beers. Just remember that you will have to wake up in the morning, so each to their own. Drink responsibly. But most importantly, guys, as always, go Browns.